Hi there, my name is Todd Rhoades, and you somehow have found the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. I don't know how you found us, but I'm glad you did. And we are in the series, in a 2-week series here on the podcast. We're here every weekday. We're talking about a brand new book that I wrote. It's called When the Church Falls. Subtitle is What We Can Learn from Leadership Collapses and How to Prevent the Next One. And we've been talking all this week, and we'll talk all next week on some of the common themes that I've found as I've looked at a lot of leadership failures over the years. This isn't my first rodeo. I've been in church ministry and watching a lot of leaders and working with a lot of leaders for years. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of leaders, a good amount of leaders fall. And it's sad and discouraging and depressing and makes me angry every time I see it. But we're looking at some of the common themes I've seen when a leader or a church falls, and trying to wrap our hands around that, our arms around that, so that we can prevent other people and other churches from falling in the future. And today, we're going to talk about bully pastors, right? Because a lot of times we think that everybody that falls, or that a lot of people that fall from ministry are just bullies, right? When it comes right down to it, they're kind of egotists. They think they're better than everybody else. Maybe they don't start out that way, but that's how they end. But the thesis for today is really this. The most dangerous pastors aren't always the bullies, okay? Not every accountability breakdown. We talked about that yesterday, about having an accountability plan, but it's not really an accountability plan because it has no teeth to it. Not every accountability breakdown involves a loud, controlling personality or a loud, controlling egotist pastor. Sometimes the most dangerous leaders are actually the quietest ones in the room. They don't shout. They don't dominate or domineer in meetings. They're kind. They're gentle. They appear to be humble, and still nobody challenges them. There's no accountability because in a lot of churches, the most unaccountable leader isn't the bully in the boardroom, it's the nice guy in the pulpit. And we're going to talk about that today here on the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. Covert control looks like deference sometimes, but it functions like dominance. So sometimes these leaders aren't always, the leaders at fault, aren't always the narcissists in kind of the clinical sense, but they exhibit something close. And here's what it looks like. They steer decisions without appearing. They're not a bull in the china shop, but they're still in control. They still can steer that decision, and nobody even has a clue that they're doing it because they're just that good. They're that sly at it. They receive input, but they rarely ever adjust course. They don't attack dissenters. They quietly dismiss them. And a lot of times they'll use spiritual language to soften the hard edges. And their reputation over time, because they're so nice and they seem like they've got it all together and that they're a really great leader, their reputation really becomes almost like a force field that nobody can touch. And the reality of it is that nice isn't the same as healthy. Nice is not the same as healthy. And nice is not the same as healthy when it comes to pastors either. There are nice pastors who have staff members who walk on eggshells around them. There are nice pastors who have board members who suppress their concerns because they're either afraid or they just don't want to make waves. And the idea of questioning a nice leader that has this force field around them, it's just almost not possible. It makes you feel like you're ungrateful or you're disloyal or maybe even sinful. And that is exactly the problem. Gentleness isn't the same as openness. Soft-spoken doesn't mean safe. Not every leader that falls, not every church that falls, is led by an egotistic, loudmouth, bull in the china shop pastor. Some leaders deflect accountability through emotional subtlety. Their humility becomes their force field. So how do you spot these? How do you spot these? Because here's the trend, right? Here's what I've seen is that sometimes, absolutely, there is just an out of control egotist pastor that just runs a church into the ground. But a lot of times, most of the people in the church love this person. They love their pastor, and they don't see the manipulation. They don't see, all they see is the humble spirit, but they don't see the cracks, the roots that are not healthy. So how do you identify these signs of covert control when they're not blatantly obvious because of the leader's personality? Watch for some of these signs, right? Decisions are always collaborative, but somehow they always seem to go the leader's way. The leader always gets his way, even though everything is painted as collaborative. Pushback is kindly received, but it's rarely acted on. The staff carry the emotional weight of keeping the peace, and feedback is spiritualized away instead of being discussed. Loyalty is expected, even if it's never directly asked for. Okay, unquestioned leadership, whether it's an egotist or a type A personality or a humble, quiet leader that kind of usurps his power and always gets his or her way. Unquestioned leadership is unhealthy leadership, regardless of the tone. Okay? This is especially dangerous in smaller churches where a pastor has served for decades. Deep relational equity makes it hard for anybody to ask questions. If your pastor's been there 20 or 30 years and has walked through you, with you, or your family, or other people, through divorces and deaths and births and hospital visits, you learn to love and respect your pastor. But that doesn't mean that there's never times that he shouldn't be challenged. And if he's in a position where your pastor's just too nice to be challenged, then that's not a healthy situation either. It may be actually a bigger red flag than you realize, because humility isn't how quiet your tone is. It's how open your posture is. Okay? Here's the bottom line for today. Nice is not the same thing as healthy. True accountability protects against passive control just as much as aggressive control. So here's your reflection and your action steps for today. If you're a leader, I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time somebody told me no? When was the last time somebody told me no and it changed my direction? And if you're on a church board, if you're an elder, ask yourself this and evaluate. Do we ever disagree with our pastor? Are we allowed to? When was the last time it happened? And how did it work out? All right, we're in the series of podcasts this week, finishing out today and then next week on my new book. It's called When the Church Falls. Want to know where your blind spots might be? You can take the free assessment at whenthechurchfalls.com. Just look for the assessment. If you're a pastor or a church staff member, you can take the pastor or church staff member assessment. If you're a board member, you can take the board member. That will see, one is for the leader, the other is for the church, to kind of see what your blind spots might be and what your susceptibility to kind of future falls might be. This isn't something that everybody takes and everybody's, oh, you're horrible, you're going to fall. No, this is we ask some really important questions that you should consider. So I hope you'll go there, whenthechurchfalls.com, take the assessment, grab a copy of the book. If you're so inclined, I think this would be a great study for you to go through with your board. If you're an elder, I think this would be a great book study. It's not too long of a book, but I think it could really help you and be preventative for anything that might be starting to happen or anything that may happen in the future. So whenthechurchfalls.com. And man, if you're in the process of going through just anything in this whole area of leadership failure, or kind of diagnosing what's going on or what just happened, I'd love to talk with you and see if there's a way that I can be of service to you. You can reach out to me anytime, podcast@chemistrystaffing.com. All right, I hope you'll join me. Have a great weekend. Join me back here again tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Today's Friday. Unless you're listening to this on another day, then join me tomorrow. But we'll be back here on Monday on the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. Have a great week.